The Galactic Federation Military Academy was a place of sharp angles and cold light. Its halls, carved from polished metal and glowing with soft blue light from alien plants, echoed with the sounds of many different species. Cadets from all over the galaxy trained here to become officers. They were the best and the brightest. Among them was a human cadet named Park GA. GA was small and quiet. She came from a generation ship, a large vessel that had been home to her family for a long time. Life on the ship was about community and careful work. She was not like the other human cadets. They were often loud and proud of their strength. GA was different. She watched everything. She noticed small details others missed. The way an instructor's tail twitched when they were annoyed. The slight change in color on a classmate's skin when they were nervous. She understood things without words. But this skill did not help her in the Academy's main training. The training was about combat and tactics. It was about being fast and strong. In these simulations, GA was always at the bottom of the class. She was not slow in her mind, but she was slow to shoot. She would watch the enemy targets, study how they moved. She looked for patterns. This hesitation meant she often failed the tests. The other cadets noticed. One of them was Kim Tae-min. He was everything the Academy admired. He was tall, strong, and confident. His voice was loud and easy to hear in the large training rooms. He was at the top of the class in every combat simulation. He believed the human strength was in its power and its weapons. He saw GA's quiet nature as a weakness. He and his friends often laughed at her when she walked by. "Look, it's the little mouse," Taemin would say, not even bothering to whisper. "Maybe she will try to stare the enemy to death." His friends would laugh. GA would keep her eyes forward and continue walking. She did not respond. She had one friend, another human cadet named Lee Hana. Hana was studying to work with alien plants. She was kind and worried about Jai-A. "You cannot let their words get to you, Jai-A," Hana said one evening in their shared room. "They are just noise," Jai-A replied, her voice soft. She was looking at a data slate, watching old videos of animals from Earth. "They do not understand." "Understand what?" Hana asked. GA did not answer. She just watched the animals on the screen. The next day, their instructor, a large reptilian being named Gorvax, addressed the class. Gorvax was huge, with thick green scales and eyes that held no warmth. He valued strength above all else. "Cadets," his voice boomed, echoing off the walls. "Your next training module begins. You will learn to face one of the most dangerous predators in the known galaxy, the maw beast from the world of Xylos." A large screen behind him lit up. It showed a creature of pure muscle and rage. It was as tall as two humans and covered in thick, dark hide. Its head was mostly a massive mouth filled with rows of sharp teeth. Its eyes were small, black, and burned with a fierce light. The video showed it tearing through dense jungle and easily knocking over large trees. A quiet fear fell over the room. "The maw beast cannot be reasoned with," Gorvax continued. "It cannot be tamed. Its only language is violence. Your task is to capture and contain it using the tools we provide. This will test your courage, your strength, and your teamwork." They would start with a simulation. The cadets were divided into squads. GA was, as usual, in a squad with cadets who were not the best. Taemin was in the lead squad, filled with the top performers. Taemin's squad went first. Their simulation appeared on the main screen for everyone to watch. They moved through a virtual jungle. They were loud. They used sonic disruptors to clear their path. When the virtual maw beast appeared, roaring a terrible digital roar, they did not hesitate. They fired plasma nets and used concussive blast to drive it into a containment zone. It was a violent, noisy process. The beast fought hard, but their combined firepower was too much. After a fierce fight, they managed to lock it in the cage. The simulation screen flashed with the word "success." Taemin turned to the class, a proud smile on his face. His squad mates clapped him on the back. Gorvax gave a slow, approving nod. "Acceptable," the instructor rumbled. "A show of necessary force." Then it was GA's squad's turn. GA put on the simulation helmet. The virtual world formed around her. She could hear the sounds of the jungle, the buzz of strange insects, the call of distant animals. Her squad moved forward. They were nervous, their voices shaky over the comms. They had the same tools as Taemin's squad. "There it is," one of them whispered. The maw beast appeared from behind a large purple fern. It was even more imposing in the simulation. It sniffed the air and let out a low, rumbling growl. "Fire the nets now," the squad leader yelled. The others started to fire, but GA did not. She stood still, her weapon lowered. She was watching the beast. She saw the way its muscles were tense, ready to spring. She saw the way its head swung from side to side, looking for a way out. She saw its eyes. They were not just filled with anger. There was something else there. A deep, wild fear. Cadet Park. "Fire your weapon!" the squad leader screamed. The maw beast focused on the source of the noise, the other cadets firing their nets. It charged. It moved with shocking speed. It swatted the nets aside and lunged. The simulation showed its massive jaws closing over the squad leader, the screen flashing red. Another cadet was thrown against a tree. The world was chaos. GI just stood there, still watching. The beast turned to her. It roared, the sound shaking her very bones through the simulator. It charged directly at her. She still did not raise her weapon. She was looking right into its eyes, trying to understand what she saw there. The massive jaws closed around her virtual body. The world went dark. Her screen flashed with a single harsh word. "Eliminated." She took off the helmet. The training room was silent for a moment, and then the laughter started. It was not just from Timon's group this time. It was from many of the cadets. Her own squad mates looked at her with anger and shame. She just stood there. One of them said, his face red, "I have never seen such cowardice." Another cadet, a tall being with 4 arms, muttered. Tamien walked over, his laughter the loudest. "What was your plan, Park? Were you going to ask it nicely to go away?" He shook his head, still smiling. "You are a disgrace. You make all humans look weak." Instructor Gorvax loomed over her. His shadow fell across her small frame. His expression was one of pure disappointment. "Cadet Park," he said, his voice cold and hard. "Your performance was worse than a failure. It was a liability. In a real situation, your inaction would have gotten your entire squad killed. You have proven you lack the basic instinct for survival required of a Federation officer. You are on report." GA did not look at him. She kept her eyes on the floor, her face feeling warm with shame. She said nothing. That evening, Hana found her. GA was not in their room. Hana checked the library, the mess hall, and finally found her in a small dark room in the zoological archives. GA was sitting alone, a large screen in front of her. She was watching raw, unedited footage from Xylos. It showed the maw beast in its natural habitat. "GA, what are you doing?" Hana asked, sitting down next to her. On the screen, the maw beast was fighting with another large animal. It was brutal and bloody. "I am watching," GA whispered. "Why?" "After what happened today, Gorvax has you on report. Everyone is talking." "Let them talk," GA said, her eyes never leaving the screen. "They are not seeing what I am seeing." Hana looked at the screen. She saw only a monster. "What is there to see?" "It is a killer. Look at its eyes," GA said. She paused the video. The image was sharp. It showed the maw beast's face mid-roar. The mouth was open wide, the teeth were terrifying. But GA was pointing at the small black eyes. Hana looked closer. "They look angry." "No," GA said softly. "Look deeper. They are not angry. They are scared." Hana frowned, not understanding. How could that creature, that engine of destruction, be scared? GA rewound the video and played another clip. This one showed the beast alone drinking from a river. Its head suddenly shot up. It looked into the jungle, its body tense. It let out a short, sharp roar, but then it backed away, its eyes wide. It was not attacking. It was warning something to stay back. "It is always alone," GI murmured, more to herself than to Hana. "It is always fighting. It does not know anything else. Everyone who sees it wants to fight it or run from it. No one tries to understand it." Hana put a hand on her friend's shoulder. "GA, it is a predator. A dangerous one. Understanding it will not stop it from eating you." GA finally turned to look at her friend. Her own eyes were clear and certain. "You are wrong," she said. "Understanding is the only thing that will." The transport ship shook as it entered the atmosphere of Xylos. Through the thick window port, Park GA watched the world below. It was a planet of deep purple and vibrant green. Giant trees with leaves the color of amethyst reached for the sky. The air was thick with steam and the sounds of unseen life. It was beautiful but also wild and dangerous. This was the next stage of their training. The simulation was over. This was real. The cadets stood in the main bay of the training outpost. The air was hot and wet and everyone was sweating. Instructor Gorvax stood before them, his reptilian scales looking dull in the humid light. The creature you failed to capture in the simulation is now in a reinforced enclosure 2 kilometers into the jungle, Gorvax announced, his voice cutting through the jungle noise. Your mission is the same. Work as a squad to subdue and contain the maw beast using non-lethal means. This will test your mettle in a live environment. The first squad to attempt the capture will be Cadet Kim Taemin's team. A confident smile spread across Taemin's face. He looked at his squad, all of them large and strong. They carried heavy sonic disruptors and large plasma net launchers. They looked ready for a war. Remember, Gorvax said, his eyes scanning the cadets and lingering for a moment on GA. Hesitation is death. The beast will not give you a second chance. Taemin's squad moved out. They marched into the jungle, their boots crunching on the strange blue-veined plants. The other cadets, including GA's squad, were taken to an observation deck. Large screens showed live feeds from the cameras on the cadets' helmets and from drones flying above the jungle. GA stood at the back of the group, watching silently. Her own squad was nervous. They kept looking at her, their expressions a mix of worry and blame. They remembered her failure. They were afraid she would cause them to fail again in the real world. On the screen, Taemin's squad moved quickly. They were loud. They used their sonic disruptors to push aside swarms of flying insects and to scare away smaller animals that scurried in the undergrowth. Their approach was not quiet. It was a statement of power. They are making too much noise, GA whispered to herself. No one heard her. Soon they reached the enclosure. It was a large area, surrounded by a high fence humming with a faint blue energy. Inside, the jungle was dense. The cameras zoomed in. There, standing near a cluster of twisting blackbark trees, was the maw beast. It was even more massive in person. Its dark hide was scarred and rough. Its muscles shifted under its skin like living rock. It was chewing on something, its massive jaws working slowly. Then it sensed them. Its head came up. Its small black eyes fixed on the squad at the gate. Ready positions. Taemin yelled, his voice clear over the audio feed. The cadets fanned out. They raised their net launchers. The plan was simple. Hit it with multiple nets at once, then use the sonic disruptors at full power to disorient it and push it into a smaller, portable containment unit. Fire. 3 plasma nets shot through the air. They were made of glowing energy, designed to wrap around the creature and shock it into submission. The maw beast reacted with shocking speed. It didn't roar. It let out a deep guttural sound and charged. It moved not away from the nets, but towards the cadets firing them. It swatted one net aside with a clawed paw. The second net caught on its shoulder, but it barely seemed to notice the sizzling energy. The third net missed completely. Hit it with the sonics, Taemin ordered. A wave of painful sound blasted from the disruptors. The leaves on the nearby trees shivered. The maw beast flinched, shaking its massive head. It was annoyed but not stopped. The sound was a direct challenge. It lowered its head and charged again, straight at the cadet holding the central disruptor. The cadet froze for a second, then tried to run. It was too late. The beast was on him. It didn't bite. It slammed its bulk into the cadet, sending him flying through the air to land hard against a tree. The audio feed from that cadet went silent. Panic set in. The squad's formation broke. They were firing nets and sonic blasts wildly. The maw beast was a whirlwind of rage. It knew the fence was a barrier, so it focused its anger on the small moving things inside its space, the cadets. It chased another one, who tripped over a root and fell. The beast stood over him and let out a roar that shook the cameras. It was a sound of pure unfiltered fury. Then it turned and smashed the portable containment unit with one powerful blow, reducing it to sparking metal. Fall back. Fall back now, Taemin screamed, his voice tight with fear. He was helping the cadet who had been thrown. They stumbled back towards the gate, the rest of the squad following. They were defeated. They had not even come close to containing the beast. Back on the observation deck, the mood was grim. Gorvax's face was a stony mask. The other cadets were silent. They had seen the best of them fail completely. The beast was truly uncontrollable. Taemin's squad returned to the outpost, bruised and humiliated. The cadet who was hit was taken to the medical bay. Taemin would not look at anyone. His confidence was gone, replaced by a sullen anger. Instructive, Gorvax said to the assembled cadets. You have seen the consequences of a flawed execution. Cadet Park's squad. You are next. Prepare yourselves. GA's squad looked at each other with dread. One of them, a cadet named June, looked at GA with desperation. "Just do what we say this time, Park, please, no more standing and staring." GA didn't answer. She was looking at the screen, which now showed a view of the empty enclosure. The maw beast was pacing back and forth, its great head swinging from side to side. It was still agitated. Her squad moved out. The walk through the jungle was tense and quiet. No one spoke. When they reached the enclosure gate, the squad leader, a cadet named Sue, gave the orders. "Same plan as Taemin's squad, but we fire the nets from a greater distance." On my mark, GA stood at the back of the group. She was not looking at her squad mates. She was looking at the beast. She was looking at the jungle around it. She noticed things. She saw that the beast in its pacing always avoided a certain type of plant. The plant had long, sharp thorns and dripped a sticky black sap. The beast gave it a wide berth, its body tense when it was near. She also listened. Above the sound of its heavy footsteps and its occasional angry huff, she heard something else. A sound so low it was almost a vibration in the air. A deep rumbling whine. It was the sound it made between roars. It was the sound it was making now. And in that moment, in the archives, watching the raw footage, they're not angry. They're scared. The squad leader raised his hand. Ready. The cadets lifted their net launchers. GA made a decision. It was a crazy decision. It was a decision that would get her kicked out of the academy for sure. But she knew with a strange and sudden certainty that their plan would not work. It would only make things worse. She slowly, carefully bent down and placed her net launcher on the ground. "What are you doing?" Sue hissed, his eyes wide with panic. GA did not answer. She took a slow step forward past the line of her squadmates. "Park! Stop, that is an order." She kept walking. She moved towards the gate that led into the enclosure. On the observation deck, everyone was watching the main screen. Gasps filled the room. "Is she insane?" Someone whispered. "She is going to get herself killed," another said. Instructor Gorvac stepped closer to the screen, his expression unreadable. GA reached the gate. She pressed the control to open it. It slid aside with a quiet hiss. The sound was small, but the maw beast heard it. It stopped its pacing. It turned. Its black eyes locked onto her small figure standing in the doorway. It was huge. It was terrifying. Up close, she could smell its musky scent and the iron smell of the raw meat it had been fed. Its chest rumbled with a warning growl. GE's heart was beating so fast she felt dizzy. But she did not run. She did not reach for a weapon. She took another slow step into the enclosure. The beast took a step towards her. It was a threat. A display of dominance. GA stopped. She closed her eyes for a second, remembering the low whine. She took a deep breath and then she made a sound. It was not a human sound. It was a soft, low hum deep in her throat. She was trying to mimic the creature's own sound of distress. She was not challenging it. She was answering it. The beast paused. Its head tilted slightly. The growling stopped. Slowly, carefully, GA did not look directly into its eyes. She looked at its shoulder, at the ground near its feet. She took a step not towards the beast but to the side. She moved towards the spiked, thorny plants that the beast was afraid of. She was showing it that she saw its fear. She was acknowledging it. She moved slowly, her soft humming never stopping. She reached the patch of thorny plants and stopped, standing near them but not touching them. She was showing the beast that she understood this was a danger. The maw beast watched her. It did not move. The tension seemed to leak out of its massive body. The low whine she had heard earlier returned, but it was quieter now. Less of a cry, more of a question. On the observation deck, no one spoke. No one moved. They were all holding their breath. They watched the small human girl and the giant monster standing in the jungle, communicating in a language no one else understood. The beast took a step. Then another. It was not charging. It was walking slowly towards her. Its movements were cautious, curious. GA stayed perfectly still, her humming now the only sound in the quiet jungle. The beast came closer and closer until it was only a few meters away. It was so close she could feel the heat from its body. It sniffed the air, its massive nose twitching. It was smelling her. It was learning her. Then it did something no one had ever seen it do before. It made a soft chuffing sound. It lowered its head just a little and took one last sniff. Then it turned and walked slowly away from her, back towards the center of the enclosure. It sat down, its back to her, and began to clean its paw, as if she were no more interesting than a passing insect. GA stood there for a long moment. Then she turned and walked just as slowly out of the enclosure. She closed the gate behind her. The lock clicked into place. She looked at her squad. Their mouths were hanging open. They were staring at her as if she were a ghost. She looked at the camera on the drone above, knowing Instructor Gorvax was watching. The exercise was over. The walk back to the outpost was completely silent. GA's squadmates did not look at her. They walked a few steps behind as if she were something strange and unknown. They had seen something impossible, and they did not know how to process it. The jungle, which had been so loud before, seemed quiet now, as if holding its breath. When they entered the main bay of the outpost, the silence inside was even heavier. Every single cadet and Instructor Gorvax was staring at them. The air was thick with unasked questions. No one laughed. No one jeered. The mockery from before was gone, replaced by a stunned disbelief. Kim Tae-min stood to the side, his arms crossed. He watched GA walk in, his face a hard mask. He had failed with weapons and strength. She had succeeded with nothing but silence and a soft sound. It made no sense to him. It challenged everything he believed. Instructor Gorvax took a step forward. His reptilian eyes were fixed on GA. He looked from her to the squad leader and back to her. "Report," Gorvax commanded, his voice a low rumble. The squad leader, Sue, stammered. "Sir, Cadet Park, Cadet Park acted against direct orders," Gorvax stated, not a question. "Yes, sir," Sue said, finding his voice. She dropped her weapon and entered the enclosure alone. "We tried to stop her." Gorvax turned his gaze fully to GA. "Explain yourself, Cadet." GA stood straight, her hands at her sides. She looked small under his intense stare, but her voice was clear and steady. "The established method was not working, sir. It was making the creature more aggressive. I used a different method." "A different method," Gorvax repeated slowly. "You walked up to a Class 10 predator and hummed at it." "I mirrored its stress vocalization, sir. I showed it I was not a threat. I acknowledged the things it was afraid of in its environment." A low murmur went through the crowd of cadets. Gorvax was silent for a long time, his tail giving a single slow twitch. He was a being of rules and procedures. What she had done was against all of them. But it had worked. The beast was contained and no one was hurt. The objective technically was met. "Your actions were insubordinate and reckless," Gorvax finally said. "You endangered yourself and disrupted your squad's operation." He paused and the entire room leaned in, waiting for the punishment. However, the objective was achieved. "Your squad passes this exercise." A collective, soft gasp filled the room. GA's squad mates looked at each other in shock and relief. They had passed because of the one person they thought would make them fail. "But," Gorvax continued, his voice hardening again, "this is not a strategy. It is a fluke. A moment of luck with a creature that was momentarily confused." He looked directly at GA. "Since you seem to have formed a connection with the specimen, you will be assigned as its primary caretaker for the duration of our stay on Xylos. You will feed it, clean its enclosure, and monitor its health. Consider it a disciplinary assignment. Perhaps daily proximity to the beast will remind you of its true nature. It was meant to be a punishment, a dirty, dangerous job that no one wanted." A few cadets smirked, the old mockery trying to return. "Let the weird girl play with the monster." GA simply nodded. "Yes, sir." For the others, the training moved on. There were other exercises, other lessons. But for GA, her life now revolved around the enclosure. Every morning after her regular classes, she would go to the beast's holding pen. The first few times were tense. The maw beast would watch her as she entered, its body stiff. She always moved slowly. She always announced her presence with that same low hum. She never made sudden moves. She never looked it directly in the eyes for too long. She brought it food. The standard issue was a thick, bland nutrient paste that the Federation used for many large carnivores. The beast would eat it, but without enthusiasm. GA noticed it would always eat the paste quickly and then go to a specific corner of the enclosure to chew on a tough, fibrous native root. She started to bring it those roots. The first time she offered one by hand, her own hand trembling slightly. The beast had sniffed it cautiously, then taken it from her with surprising gentleness. It was a small victory. She learned its routines. She saw that it disliked the high-pitched whine of the cleaning drones. When they flew over, it would get restless and pace. She learned it preferred to sleep in a spot where the sun broke through the purple canopy, For a few hours each afternoon, she spent hours just sitting near the fence, watching it. She was not just a caretaker. She was a student. She was learning its language. The flick of an ear, the way it held its tail, the different sounds it made. There was a grunt for hunger, a low rumble for contentment, and that soft, deep whine for when it was uneasy or sad. One evening, she was in her room, looking at her data slate. Hana came in. "You smell like the jungle," Hana said, sitting on her bed. "And that animal, his name is Gum," Ga said softly without looking up. Hana stared at her. "You named it?" "His," Ga corrected. "And yes. His name is Gum. What does that mean?" "It is an old word from Earth. It means bear." "It fits him." Hana shook her head in amazement. "Ga, everyone thinks you are crazy. They say you are going to get yourself killed. Taman says it's only a matter of time." Ga finally looked up. Her eyes were calm. "Taman does not understand. No one here understands. They see a monster. But Gom is just an animal. He is alone. He was taken from his home and put in a cage. Everyone who comes near him tries to fight him or scare him. Would you not be angry? Would you not be scared?" Hana was quiet for a moment. "I suppose I would. He is not a monster," Ga repeated. "He is just lonely." The next day, during her time with Gom, something changed. It was late in the afternoon. The sun was casting long golden shadows through the trees. Ga was sitting on her usual spot on a log, just inside the enclosure. She had her data slate with her, and she was playing a low, resonant tone she had found in the Academy's music library. It was a deep cello note that vibrated in the air. Gom was lying a short distance away, his massive head on his paws. He was watching her. His body was relaxed. The low sound seemed to soothe him. Slowly, he pushed himself up. Ga's breath caught. He was so big. He walked towards her. He moved not with the tense, careful steps of before, but with a calm, easy gait. He came right up to her and stopped. He lowered his head. He sniffed her hair, her shoulder. His breath was warm and smelled of earth and leaves. Ga's heart was pounding, but she forced herself to stay still. She kept humming the low note. Then Gom did something that made her eyes fill with tears. He made a soft rumbling sound deep in his chest, a sound she now knew was his sound of comfort. He nudged her gently with his broad nose. Then he slowly, carefully lowered his enormous head and rested it in her lap. The weight of it was immense, but it was a gentle weight. She could feel the warmth of him, the slow, steady pulse of his life. He closed his eyes. He trusted her. Tentatively, Ga raised her hand. She touched the rough, scarred hide between his eyes. His skin was warm and leathery. He let out a deep, sighing breath, his whole body relaxing further. She sat there for a long time, her hand resting on his head, the low cello note still playing from the slate. The purple leaves drifted down around them. In that moment, there was no academy, no mocking cadets, no rules. There was just a girl and a lonely creature, and a bond that no one else could understand. She had not tamed a monster. She had made a friend, and she had named him Gum. The academy station was buzzing with a different kind of energy. The harsh, focused atmosphere of training was gone, replaced by the bright lights and cheerful music of the Cultural Exchange Gala. The main hangar bay, usually filled with ships and training equipment, had been transformed. Colorful banners from 100 different Federation species hung from the high ceiling. Long tables were piled high with strange and wonderful foods. The air was filled with the chatter of diplomats, officers, and cadets, all dressed in their finest uniforms or traditional clothes. It was a night for celebration, for forgetting the pressures of military life. Park Ga stood near the back of the crowd, feeling out of place. She wore her formal cadet uniform, but it felt stiff and uncomfortable. The noise was too loud, the lights were too bright. She missed the quiet of the enclosure, the simple sounds of the Xylo's jungle, the steady, calm presence of Gom. She had just come from seeing him. He was safe in his maximum security kennel, a heavily reinforced cell deep in the zoological wing. She had fed him his favorite roots and sat with him for a while. He had seemed restless, sensing the change in the station's routine. She had hummed to him until he settled down. "Trying to hide from your adoring public?" a voice said beside her. It was Hana smiling. She looked nice in her uniform. Ga gave a small smile back. "There is no public, just noise." "Come on," Hana said, gently pulling her arm. Try this fruit from Cygnus B, it tastes like candy. They moved through the crowd. G.A. saw Kim Taemin across the room. He was surrounded by a group of cadets laughing loudly. He saw her and his smile faded. He turned away, saying something to his friends that made them glance in her direction and smirk. The old mockery was still there, just quieter now. As G.A. passed by, she heard him mutter, "At least her pet is locked up where it belongs. One less monster to worry about." G.A. kept walking, her face neutral. The words stung, but she was used to them. Gom was not a monster. He was more gentle than any of them. The gala continued. Speeches were made. Music played. For a little while, it seemed like a perfect, peaceful night. Deep in the silent, empty corridors of the zoological wing, Gom lifted his head. A low vibration was humming through the deck plates. It was a wrong sound. A foreign sound. It was not the familiar hum of the station's engines or the quiet footsteps of the keepers. This was a sharp, angry buzz. It made the fur on his back prickle. He got to his feet and paced in his cell, a low growl forming in his throat. Back in the hangar bay, the first sign of trouble was a flicker of the lights. The music stuttered for a second. A few people looked up, confused. Then the main lights died, plunging the huge room into darkness, broken only by the emergency red strips along the floor. Screams erupted. A moment later, the backup generators kicked in, casting a dim, ghostly light over the scene, and then the wall exploded. It wasn't a blast from an explosion. It was like the metal itself was torn apart by giant, invisible claws. A shower of sparks and molten metal flew into the room. Through the jagged hole in the station's hull stepped a nightmare. It was a Shrike King, a biomechanical assassin of the Ravager swarm. It was all sharp angles and gleaming black chitin. It stood on two powerful reverse-jointed legs, and it had four long scythe-like arms. Its head was a featureless, helmet-like dome, but it moved with a terrifying, precise intelligence. It was designed for one thing, to kill and to cause chaos. Panic turned into pure terror. The crowd surged away from the creature, people tripping over each other. The Shrike King took a step forward, its scythe arms slicing through a decorative banner like it was paper. Security forces rushed in, their plasma rifles firing. Bright bolts of energy slammed into the Shrike King's armor. They sizzled and sparked but did no real damage. The creature moved with blinding speed. It swatted two security officers aside, their bodies hitting the floor with a sickening thud. "Everyone, get back," an officer yelled. The cadets, trained for combat, tried to form a defense. Kim Taemin was among them. "Aim for the joints!" he shouted, his voice loud but tight with fear. He and a few others fired. The Shrike King ignored the blast on its body. It focused on the source of the attack. It lunged at Taemin's group. One of its scythe arms flashed out. A cadet screamed as his rifle was cut in half. Another was knocked to the ground. Taemin fired again and again, but the creature was too fast. It closed the distance. One of its scythes came down in a swift, brutal arc. Taemin tried to dodge, but he was too slow. The sharp tip sliced deep into his leg. He cried out and fell, clutching the wound. Blood seeped through his fingers. He was helpless. The Shrike King stood over him, its featureless head looking down. It raised its scythe arm for the final blow. Taemin looked up, his eyes wide with terror. This was it. This was how he would die, at a party, killed by a monster. G.A. was frozen, watching the scene unfold from behind an overturned table. Her mind was racing. They couldn't stop it. Their weapons were useless. The station was being torn apart. And then she remembered. The vibration. The wrong sound. It must have been the Shrike King's ship docking. A sound Gom had heard. He had known. Her eyes went wide. Gom. At that moment, a massive shockwave rolled through the hangar bay. It wasn't an explosion. It was a sound of pure primal fury that shook the very air. It was a roar she knew, but she had never heard it like this. It was not the roar of a scared animal. It was the roar of a protector. A challenger. Everyone, even the Shrike King, turned towards the source of the sound. The main entrance to the hangar bay, a huge set of reinforced doors, was twisted and broken, torn from their rails. And standing in the shattered doorway, his massive body blocking the opening, was Gom. His fur was bristling. His muscles were coiled like steel springs. His lips were pulled back from his teeth in a terrifying snarl. His small black eyes were no longer calm or sad. They burned with a fierce hot light. They were fixed on the Shrike King. The Ravager assassin straightened up, forgetting about Taman for a moment. Its body language changed. This was not prey. This was a rival. An apex predator. Gom took a step into the hangar. Then another. His heavy footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. He was not pacing nervously. He was stalking. He moved with a powerful, confident grace GA had never seen before. The Shrike King let out a high-pitched, clicking shriek and charged. The two titans met in the center of the hangar bay. The Shrike King was a creature of sharp, calculated movements. Its scythe arms moved in a blur, slicing through the air where Gom had been a moment before. But Gom was not there. He moved with a power that was surprisingly agile for his size. He twisted away from the slashing blades, his own bulk his greatest weapon. He didn't try to slash back with his claws. He drove his shoulder into the Shrike King's center of mass. It was like a battering ram hitting a wall. The sound was a loud, crushing thud. The Shrike King was thrown back, skidding across the polished floor. The insectoid creature recovered quickly, its featureless head seeming to analyze its opponent. It let out another shriek and charged again, this time low to the ground, aiming for Gom's legs. Gom was ready. He rose up on his hind legs, making himself even larger, and brought his full weight down. The Shrike King had to scramble back to avoid being crushed. One of its scythe arms got caught under Gom's descending paw. There was a sharp cracking sound. The chitinous armor did not break, but the limb beneath it bent at a wrong angle. The Shrike King shrieked in what could only be pain or rage. It was not used to an enemy that could match its strength. It was not used to an enemy that fought with raw brute force. From behind her table, GA watched, her heart in her throat. This was not the Gom she knew. This was the wild creature from the jungles of Xylos, the one everyone feared. But she saw the intelligence in his movements. He was not just brawling. He was using his weight. He was using the environment. He drove the Shrike King towards a support column, just as he had done with trees in his home jungle. The Shrike King, now limping on one damaged arm, was getting desperate. It launched itself at Gom's neck, its remaining scythes aimed for a killing blow. Gom met the charge head-on. He did not dodge. He opened his massive jaws and caught one of the scythe arms in his mouth. The sound of his teeth grinding against the hard chitin was horrible, a screech of metal and bone. He clamped down with all his strength. There was a final sickening crunch. The scythe arm snapped off at the joint. Black, oily fluid sprayed from the stump. The Shrike King convulsed, its shrieks becoming garbled and weak. It was crippled. It tried to back away, but Gom gave it no quarter. This thing had threatened his home. It had threatened her. With a final, powerful surge, Gom slammed the Shrike King against the thick support column. He pressed his full weight against it, pinning the creature. There was one last, weak struggle, and then the Shrike King went still. Its remaining limbs twitched and then dropped to the floor. It was over. Silence returned to the hangar bay. It was a heavy, stunned silence, broken only by the crackle of sparks from the broken wall and Gom's heavy, panting breaths. The massive beast stood over the dead invader, his own blood dripping from a deep gash on his flank. His sides heaved. He looked around the ruined hangar, at the scared faces peeking out from behind tables and broken machinery. His fierce eyes scanned the crowd. Then they found her. GA slowly stood up from behind her table. She took a hesitant step forward. Then another. Gom turned away from the dead Shrike King. He completely ignored it. He limped towards her, his great head lowered. The fury was gone from his eyes. The fire was gone. In its place was the same look he gave her in the enclosure. A look of calm. A look of trust. He stopped in front of her. He was so big, so powerful, standing there in the middle of the destruction he had caused. He nudged her gently with his nose, just like he did when they were alone. He let out a soft, low whine. It was the same sound she had first heard in the jungle on Xylos. The sound of stress. The sound of fear. But this time it was a sound of concern. For her, tears welled in GA's eyes. She reached out a hand, ignoring the blood and the chaos around them, and placed it gently on his snout. "It's okay, Gom," she whispered, her voice shaking. "It's over. You are safe." He leaned into her touch, a low, rumbling purr vibrating through his body and into her hand. He was not a victorious warrior celebrating a kill. He was a friend, checking on his friend. In that moment, the entire galaxy watching through station security feeds saw the truth. This was not a tamed beast. This was not a weapon. This was a bond. A bond built on understanding, not fear. A bond built on empathy, not force. Kim Taemin lay on the floor a short distance away, clutching his bleeding leg. He had seen it all. He had seen the monster he feared save his life. He had seen the creature he mocked become the station's savior. And he had seen it walk away from its victory to gently nuzzle the cadet he had laughed at. He looked away, a deep shame washing over him that was worse than the pain in his leg. Instructor Gorvax walked slowly into the center of the hangar. Medical teams were now rushing in, attending to the wounded. Security secured the body of the Shrike King. Gorvax's eyes went from the dead invader to Gom, and then to G.A., who was still comforting the great beast. He walked over to them. G.A. looked up, worried that he would order Gom to be locked away again. Gorvax looked at Gom for a long time. He looked at the deep gash on his flank, at the way he stood protectively near G.A. Then he looked at G.A. "Your Gom is injured?" Gorvax said, his voice not as hard as before. "Yes, sir," G.A. said, her hand still on Gom's snout. "He needs medical attention." Gorvax gave a single, slow nod. "Then see to it, cadet. The veterinary bay is at your disposal." He then turned and walked over to where Taemin was being treated. He looked down at the injured cadet. Taemin could not meet his eyes. "You fought the monster, Cadet Kim," Gorvax said, his voice flat. "You used strength against strength." He paused, glancing back at G.A. and Gom. She understood it. That is the difference. Those words were heard by many in the quiet hangar. They were not just about a girl and an animal. They were about a new way of seeing things, about a different kind of human strength. From that day on, no one at the academy ever laughed at Park Ji-ae again. They looked at her with a new respect and a little bit of awe. She continued her studies and she continued to care for Gom. He was given a much larger, more natural habitat on the station, and G.A. was officially assigned as his handler. The story of the small, quiet human cadet and the predator who became her pet spread throughout the Galactic Federation. It became a legend, a story called humanity, fuck yeah. But for G.A., it was not about being great. It was much simpler than that. It was about a girl, a lonely creature, and the friendship that saved them both.